marine biologist, and Martin and I are just amateur divers. We do something called sea search, which is just going down onto the seabed, having a look what's there, and reporting it back, and it gives us a picture of what's actually down there on the seabed. Now, one day, Matt was in pool, and he saw that crater, and we were over at Kimmeridge, and we saw lots of craters. Now, we know this area quite well, and we had never seen that before. Anyway, we got talking, and Matt's a marine biologist, and we worked out that they were actually bream nests. And not many people know anything about bream nests. They know what happens in an aquarium, but they don't actually know what happens in real life. In fact, these were the only two technical papers that Matt could find on black bream. So we thought, oh, well, let's go and have a look then, shall we? So what we did was we got some GoPros and went to the seabed and left the GoPros on the seabed for several hours. In fact, sometimes we leave them for a couple of days and just film what happens with the bream. And from there, we sit down and watch the video. Now, I said this is actually a shortened version of what we do, but we've actually got between 60 and 100 hours of video of black bream, and we didn't think you wanted to see it all tonight. So, what does happen with the bream? They come in, and they swim along, and they just keep swimming. They don't do anything at first, but they just keep swimming. And then, when they get bored of that, we go the other way. We sat there and watched them. Both. Then, the next thing is that the male starts to build a nest. And what he does is he moves the shale or the sand or whatever there is down to the bedrock. And you see, he even moves stones. Now we've taken samples of this shale, and it can move 70 kilos just to the side. And he builds it so it's like a rampart. So you've got this circle with this rampart. It looks like a lunar landscape when he's done it. And then he starts to do things like changing colour. That's what you're probably used to seeing, the bream, looking like that, silvery bream. When we go in the water, we don't see the bream because they're that colour and it blends so nicely into the background that we can't see it. And as soon as we hit the water, we've done tests on this, as soon as we get in the water, they swim away. They leave the nest, they go and hide, they don't like us. But a bit later on, they go black. You see the colour has changed, and this male has got the very pronounced bar down the side. Female has a horizontal stripe along the side. But they change, and that seems to be when they're stressed or when they're courting. The bream just go black. And sometimes it's a very dramatic change. You can see it on the video how dramatic the change is. And this is a bit like walkabout on a Friday night. They like having a good fight. They protect their territory, but sometimes they don't succeed. And the territory changes owners several times over the period. And you see they're really getting stuck in because they're getting into the breeding season. And they're really close, the nests can be really close to each other, so any infringement, then they just go and fight it out. Once they've built their nest, the next thing to do is find a a partner. And this is Brian courting Brenda, who's there, who's obviously interested in the nest. And what he really wants her to do is lay eggs. And you see, he gets quite excited. It's, as I said, it's a bit like Wannabe on a Friday night. See, there's another male in the background. He would very much like Brenda to come along and talk to him. It's a bit like also watching a farce. Then she'll disappear off. Now, one thing we would really love to be able to show you now is her actually laying the nest. It's actually fish porn we'd like to take, but unfortunately they're shy. And they have not given us any footage of the act. That's for this year, we hope. Once she's laid the nest, the eggs, you can see all the eggs on this nest. All this white snow. That's how many eggs they lay. That is probably 1.5 meters across. It's covered in eggs. And the male will then start to tend it. About 14 days he's going to look after those eggs. He's going to be a very, very good parent. And I think about it and I look and think, you know, the male will look after it, he'll do all the housekeeping, he'll guard the nest, the females will just swim off somewhere. And I think, I'm a woman, I'm supposed to be evolved from something like that. Where did we go wrong? So this is the male now. There are a few eggs on that nest. This is in the early stages. And he's going to tend the eggs. So if you see, he does this little waggle dance over them. He's dusting off the silt and keeping it clean, probably wafting a little bit of oxygen onto them. But he's there to protect them and to keep them clean so they can have the best possible start for laying eggs, till they hatch. And once they hatch, his job's over. Now, if he leaves the nest, here's one of your ballan rats, and it's in there. It's going to feed on it. And there are other fish coming around to predate on it. You get the gold cinnies in there, anything. Even other male bream will come and predate on the eggs if the male isn't there. But this is a big ballan rat and he's not going to move for anything, or is he? Now, the eggs will hatch, and we've been told that they will hang around over where the nest was for 3 years. We found that a little bit hard to believe because they're only little creatures, and some of the areas that we dive, where we've seen nests, it's quite current runs. So we thought, we're not sure that they're going to hang about there. And we've dived the area after they've hatched, and we've seen tiny little fry, and then a bit later on you don't see any. So we presumed that they just weren't there. And then we went looking in Studland Bay and in Poole Harbour. We're finding these tiny little bream. So they're obviously going somewhere, and they're going somewhere with not as much current as on the sites where they're laid, and somewhere with some cover, so that they can hide away from predators and grow up into some. Now, whether they stay over here and don't migrate with the rest of them for 3 years, we don't know. But we do know that they don't actually stay around the nest for that period of time. So what have we found out? We've got a better understanding of the predation pressures. We've confirmed the male's vital role. The female lays the eggs and disappears. The male spends 14 days or so sat on that nest 24/7 guarding it before he disappears off. And if he goes, then the predators are in there taking it away. So he's actually quite a good parent. We've also noticed that the nest structures change. We were told originally that they came in late April. They nested over May and then they went. But the first year we did it, there was a terrific storm at the end of May. It was a force 9. And we went diving after that, and the nests had been completely wiped out. So we thought, oh well, poor things, there'll be no fish next year. We went diving a couple of weeks later, and they'd rebuilt the nests, they'd changed the shapes of the nests, so we think different fish had had a little fight over them as well, and they'd laid again. And then the following year from that, we found that they did have 2 egg-laying periods as well. So the period of laying that we thought was just May is actually April through till June. And then they don't seem to lay after that, but they fooled us before, they could fool us again. We found the juvenile nursery areas. We've been, it's been valuable for making conservation decisions. There's a dredging programme over the other side of the Isle of Wight, and they've used this information to say that they cannot dredge during the bream nesting season because of the amount of silt it throws up. So it is actually being used for useful things. And we can tell the story about the bream and actually show you what happens. This is one of our problems. This is Matt, and he's putting the camera on the nest. Now, that's the edge, that rampart is the edge of the nest. And we thought, oh, you've got trouble here, Matt. 38 seconds later. He was not a happy fish. That was well in his territory. Matt had spent a fortune on that lens. Now, there was actually a 7-pound lead weight under that. See, he's gone all black again. A couple of females going over the top, but he doesn't want that camera in his territory. But then would we want one in your bedroom? If you just watch, he's doing what we would do to move something too heavy for us. He's using leverage. I mean, this is a fish. He's not supposed to have a particularly big brain, but he's worked out how to move it. I'll tell you what, mate, I didn't get much video. So that's one of the problems we have from it. Well, that was a very brief overview of what happens with the bream, as how they nest. Thank you for listening. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I mean, as fishermen, we don't know whether we should be taking the males or the females. You know, what's the best ones to take? Obviously, a female full of eggs is not great to take, but what do you suggest? If I mean, you're going to say don't take any, but
No, I'm not going to say don't take any. There's a lot of fish out there. At the moment, there are a lot of fish around, and there have been for a few years. They're not in short supply. If you were taking a lot, and it was actually acting on the to the detriment of the species, then yeah, I would say don't take any. But you're not, are you? You're taking a couple each, 2 or 3, and yeah, when you catch them, then if there's a female that is full of eggs, and she's right at the beginning of the season, and by that I mean early April, then yeah, let her go. But after that, the really important one is the male, because as soon as she's laid her eggs, then the male takes over, and the male looks after those eggs. If he is missing, then that nest is wiped out. So I personally would say, at the beginning of the very beginning of the season, when they're just coming in, then the males take the males. But then once they've started laying, which is only a week, 10 days or so after they've come in, then leave the males. But that's my personal opinion. I can't make the decision for you.
Mm-hmm.
But does another male, if you take a male off, does another male come in?
Yeah, he comes in and eats the eggs.
So he won't guard the nest?
Oh no.
There's a huge amount we don't know. We don't. If you go out there now, we could put a camera in, and there's thousands of bream swimming around. This particular site, which is off Kimmeridge, is a good half a mile long by about 100 metres wide, and it's just covered nest after nest after nest. So there's hundreds, if not thousands, of nests. What we don't know is how many males that represents. We know it's one male per nest, but we don't know how many others are maybe swimming around. And actually, unless they've gone black, got the white stripe on, on a video, they're quite difficult to know if it's a male or female. So if you pull a male bream out, you don't know whether that male's sort of got eggs on a nest or not got eggs on the nest. If it hasn't, you keep that male, it's making no difference. If it has, and you keep that male, then basically that nest is going to be destroyed, because literally within minutes there'll be predators, including the other bream, because I assume they're hungry, because they haven't gone off anywhere to feed, and they'll just pile in, and within hours they'll eat all the eggs, and then they'll clean the nest off, and another one will come on and carry on. But then, if you put the male back, the other bit we don't know, we've been trying to work out how we could do this, but we haven't been able to work it out yet. But if we were able to sort of take a fish off the nest that's got the cameras on, and then put the fish back in, would that fish be able to find its way back to the nest and carry on doing what it's doing? And again, we just don't know. There's just so much you don't know.
There was something I heard that they changed sex. Is that right?
Yes. They're born female, and then after a couple of years, and they get to the right size, they then become male.
Okay. They don't change again then?
No, they don't.
Because they've made up their mind then, haven't they?
It might be Grace and Perry of the...
Either gay or straight.
Cuckoo wrens do the same thing. Cuckoo wrens also change from female to male, so